The world stood still as the alien fleet loomed overhead, blocking out the sun and casting shadows over entire cities. Governments were scrambling, unsure of what to do next. The initial shock of their arrival had worn off, replaced by a growing sense of fear and confusion. The world's leaders were united in their uncertainty. No one knew why these ships were here or what the aliens wanted. Communications had been attempted, but all attempts had failed. The aliens refused to speak, their vast ships hovering motionless in the sky. In Washington, D.C., the military command center buzzed with activity. General Hayes, the leader of Earth's defense forces, stood at the center of the room, his hands gripping the edges of the command table. The tension was palpable as he stared at the screens displaying images of the alien fleet. His mind raced with possibilities. The first step was clear: prepare for the worst. But even he, with all his years of military experience, had no idea what the worst really looked like. Dr. Emily Carter, a brilliant scientist working with the defense team, was deep in thought. She had been tasked with deciphering the alien technology, but the task felt impossible. The machines the aliens had deployed were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. Their technology was far beyond Earth's understanding, and yet it wasn't hostile, at least not yet. It felt like they were waiting for something, as if these visitors from another star system were testing humanity in some way. Then, without warning, a strange signal came through on the communications channels. It wasn't the usual static they had been hearing, but a clear, coherent transmission. The room fell silent. General Hayes quickly gestured for Dr. Carter to begin decoding. The message wasn't in any language Earth had ever encountered, but the symbols appeared familiar, almost as if they were crafted specifically for humanity to understand. They were made of geometric shapes, twisting and turning in ways that seemed deliberate and meaningful. As the symbols flashed across the screen, they began to form words. A voice, cold and mechanical, echoed through the command center. Humanity, it began, sending chills down the spines of everyone present. You are being observed. Your species, your world, has been chosen to participate in a test of strength, of unity, and of intelligence. The voice paused, and for a moment, there was nothing but the sound of static. The tension in the room grew as everyone waited for the next part of the message. What did it mean? Were these aliens here to conquer or to help? We are the Galactic Council, the voice continued, an ancient and powerful collective. We have watched your world from the far reaches of the universe. For millennia, we have observed countless civilizations, and we have seen many fall. But you are different. You have proven that you are capable of growth, of resilience. But now you will face the ultimate challenge, the challenge of the stars. The transmission paused again, as if the voice was letting the weight of its words settle in. Dr. Carter was working furiously, trying to understand what was happening. The patterns of the symbols were becoming clearer, but the message seemed to be more than just a warning. It was a challenge, an invitation to prove humanity's worth. You have proven your ability to survive, the voice said, its tone growing more intense. But that is not enough. The Galactic Council demands more. You must show that you are worthy of joining the greater galactic community. You must demonstrate that you can rise above your violent past, that you can prove your worth, not just as a species, but as a planet. We will give you one chance, one challenge. Fail, and Earth will be destroyed. Succeed, and you will be given access to the knowledge, power, and technology of the galaxy. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a deafening silence in the room. The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. Earth, a world that had been divided for centuries, was now facing a challenge unlike any before it. The alien fleet in the sky was not just a force of destruction. It was a test to determine if humanity could rise above its past and show that it was capable of something greater. General Hayes turned to the screen, his face set with determination. He knew that Earth had no choice but to accept the challenge. But the stakes were high. One mistake, one misstep, and the planet would be lost forever. There was no room for failure. The fate of every living thing on Earth rested in the hands of humanity's leaders. "This is it," General Hayes said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to be ready for anything. We don't know what the aliens are looking for, but we do know this. If we don't pass this test, we won't survive." Dr. Carter stepped forward, her mind racing. The challenge was clear, but the answer was not. Humanity needed to prove that it had learned from its history, that it had evolved beyond the conflicts and mistakes of the past. But how could Earth possibly demonstrate this to beings who were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered? How could they show the Galactic Council that they were worthy of survival? As the hours passed, the global leaders convened in emergency meetings. There were heated discussions, arguments, and plans formulated. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. The real test wasn't about weapons or technology. It was about something far more fundamental. Earth had to prove that it could come together, not as nations or ideologies, but as a single, unified species. The test was about unity, about showing the aliens that humanity had outgrown its history of war and division. The eyes of the world were on Earth. Every nation, every person, every leader was now part of this challenge. It was no longer just about defending the planet from the alien fleet. It was about proving that humanity was capable of something greater. Could Earth show the Galactic Council that it had learned from its mistakes? Could it prove that it was ready to stand among the stars? As the alien fleet continued to hover above, the final challenge loomed larger than ever. The clock was ticking, and Earth had no choice but to face the Galactic Council's test head-on. Failure was not an option. The fate of the planet depended on their ability to come together and rise above the past. In that moment, as the entire world held its breath, humanity stood on the precipice of its greatest trial. The challenge was clear. The only question left was whether Earth was ready to face it. Hook. The Galactic Council has issued its challenge. Humanity must prove its worth or face destruction. With Earth's fate on the line, can humanity rise above its violent past and show the galaxy that it's ready to take its place among the stars? As the Galactic Council's chilling message echoed through the speakers, a silence descended over the room. No one spoke. Every leader, every general, every scientist in the command center was frozen in disbelief. The enormity of the situation was hard to grasp. A test. A challenge to prove humanity's worth. Earth was now on trial, and the entire planet's future depended on their ability to meet the expectations of a force far more advanced than anything humanity had ever encountered. General Hayes, trying to shake the initial shock, turned to his team. His eyes were sharp, his voice steady, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on his shoulders. "We've been given a chance, a terrible and incredible chance. Earth must unite, and we need to prove that we are more than the sum of our divisions. We don't have time to waste. The clock is ticking." Dr. Emily Carter, still staring at the now dark screen, was already processing what this challenge might mean. She had been working on decoding alien technology for weeks, but this new revelation felt different. These invaders were not here to conquer in the traditional sense. They were here to judge. They were watching humanity, waiting to see if they were ready for something far beyond survival. If they failed, Earth would be lost, wiped out like countless civilizations before them. But if they succeeded, if they showed that they were worthy, then perhaps they could join a cosmic community, a future of progress, knowledge, and unity across the stars. Yet, the question lingered. How? Humanity had spent centuries fighting wars, dividing into countless nations, and struggling with internal conflicts. Would they be able to put all of that aside and demonstrate true unity in the face of a test they did not understand? The aliens hadn't given them clear instructions. They had merely set the stage and left humanity to figure out the rest. In the war room, General Hayes looked out the window at the sky. The massive alien ships loomed like giants in the clouds. He couldn't help but feel small in the face of such an overwhelming force. But this was the moment, humanity's moment. This wasn't just about defending Earth from invasion. It was about something much bigger. The future of the planet, of the human race, depended on their ability to come together, set aside their differences, and face this challenge head-on. His thoughts were interrupted by Dr. Carter, who had been scanning the transmission logs, trying to analyze any hidden meaning in the alien message. "I think I've found something," she said, looking up. "There's more here than just a challenge. The Galactic Council didn't just want to test us. They're offering us something. A chance to evolve, to join the greater galactic community. They'd been watching us for a long time. They know we've made mistakes, but they're giving us a way to move forward." General Hayes nodded, processing her words. "But what do they want? What do we need to do to prove ourselves? We don't even know what their expectations are. We've been given a test with no rules. We can't afford to make a mistake." The room was filled with the buzz of conversations, each person trying to wrap their head around what was happening. The global leaders were coordinating in real time, sending messages to one another, trying to devise a strategy. Earth's military leaders were on edge. The alien ships had not yet made a move, but every passing second felt like an eternity. Dr. Carter continued to sift through the data, her face pale but determined. The message spoke of strength, unity, and intelligence. They said, "We've proven we can survive, but that's not enough. What they're asking for is something deeper. It's about our evolution as a species. We need to show that we can rise above the violence and division of the past." "Unity," General Hayes muttered to himself. It was the one word that seemed to carry the weight of this entire test. Humanity had been anything but unified throughout its history. Wars, conflicts, greed, and division had defined their past. Now they were being asked to demonstrate something completely different, something that had never been fully realized. Could Earth truly come together as one, transcending its boundaries and embracing a collective future? It was a daunting prospect, but the only choice they had was to try. Hours passed, and the world's leaders convened in emergency meetings. Every country, every military power, every scientist was now focused on one thing: the test. Earth had to pass. But how could they possibly meet the expectations of an alien council whose power far exceeded anything humanity had known? What kind of challenge were they about to face? In cities all across the globe, governments were calling for action. People were nervous, but they were also beginning to rally. The message from the aliens had been clear. This was humanity's moment. No longer could countries act alone. Earth's defenders needed to unite, and quickly. As night fell, General Hayes stood before a gathering of military officials, each of them representing a different corner of the Earth. This was it. There would be no more isolation, no more fighting among themselves. "We face an enemy far greater than any we've encountered," Hayes said, his voice calm but firm. "But this enemy isn't like the ones we fought before. It's not a battle of firepower or technology. It's a battle for our survival as a species. We must prove that we are ready for a future beyond the stars. We will do it together. No more divisions, no more countries, just humanity." As the leaders exchanged looks, something changed. There was a shift in the room, an understanding that, for the first time in history, Earth was truly united in a common cause. The stakes were clear. Failure meant annihilation, but success could mean something beyond anything humanity had ever imagined. Across the world, leaders began to make the difficult decisions. Alliances were forged, resources were pooled, and nations worked together as they never had before. The message was loud and clear. Earth had to show that it could rise above its chaotic past and prove it was ready to join the galaxy. The days ahead would be full of challenges, political, military, and social, but there was no turning back. The alien ships in the sky continued to hover, waiting. The clock was ticking, and humanity had to act. General Hayes watched the sky through the windows of the war room. It wasn't just a test of firepower or technology. It was a test of humanity itself. The fate of Earth, and of everything they had ever known, hung in the balance. Could they prove to the Galactic Council that they were worthy? Only time would tell. Hook. The Galactic Council has laid down the gauntlet, and Earth must now prove it is worthy of the stars. As humanity faces its greatest challenge, will the planet rise above its past mistakes or fall into ruin? The weight of the challenge hung heavily in the air as General Hayes and Dr. Carter stood side by side, staring at the vast array of screens displaying global communications, military deployments, and scientific reports. Earth was in a race against time. With the alien fleet still hovering ominously above, humanity had to come together to face the greatest test it had ever encountered. The whole planet was now united by a single daunting question. Could they prove to the Galactic Council that they were more than just a species torn apart by conflict? The war room had become the nerve center of Earth's defense. Every decision, every move made by the world's leaders, would either ensure survival or seal their doom. The leaders of every nation were now communicating in a way they never had before, forging temporary alliances and pooling their resources to face the alien threat. But even in the midst of this forced unity, the underlying tensions were clear. Countries that had been rivals for centuries were now expected to stand shoulder to shoulder, not just in defense, but in a common cause for survival. General Hayes was aware that this challenge was not one of technology, not one of firepower, but of something far more intangible. Earth had to demonstrate that it was capable of something beyond the wars and conflicts that had scarred its history. The Galactic Council was watching, and if they couldn't prove humanity was ready to take its place in the stars, it would mean the end of Earth as they knew it. The stakes couldn't have been higher. "We don't have much time," Hayes said, his voice steady but heavy with the weight of responsibility. "Every minute counts. We need to prove to them that we can work together. Not as nations, not as divided groups, but as one species." Dr. Carter, who had been working tirelessly to decode the alien transmission, looked up from the data she was scanning. Her face was pale, eyes tired, but there was a spark of determination in her gaze. "We can do this," she said, her voice surprisingly calm despite the chaos surrounding them. The message was clear. The Galactic Council is testing us not just for our survival instincts, but for our ability to unite as one. They want to see if we can put aside our differences and evolve. We've been given a rare chance. If we can pass this test, it could change the entire course of our future. General Hayes nodded, though his mind was racing. How could humanity prove its worth when it had failed to unify for so long? For centuries, Earth had been divided by war, greed, and politics. There had been moments of cooperation, but they were always short-lived, overshadowed by human nature's tendency to turn back to division. Now, with the fate of their entire world hanging in the balance, humanity had to show that it was more than its history of failure. The next few hours were a blur of action. Earth's military forces were being consolidated into a unified global defense command. Weapons were being upgraded, plans were being made, and nations were scrambling to prepare for the worst. But there was something deeper at play, a need for collective action that went beyond weapons or tactics. This challenge was not just about fighting the aliens, it was about fighting humanity's own nature. While military strategists focused on defense, Dr. Carter worked relentlessly to understand more about the alien fleet. She was still trying to make sense of their technology, their ships, and what it all meant. She knew that the aliens were far beyond Earth's capabilities, but she also believed that Earth's best hope lay in finding a way to communicate, to understand what the Galactic Council truly wanted. They weren't just conquerors. They were test givers, and their test required humanity to show growth, intelligence, and unity. At the same time, global leaders were making decisions that would define the future of humanity. The United Nations had become a crucial platform for diplomacy, and emergency meetings were being held nonstop. One by one, nations were starting to relinquish some of their autonomy, realizing that this was no longer a time for national pride or selfish agendas. If they wanted to survive, they had to work together as one unified force, regardless of past conflicts. But unity was easier said than done. Across the world, protests and dissent began to emerge. Citizens of various countries, distrustful of one another for historical reasons, began questioning the sudden push for unity. Leaders struggled to maintain control, and whispers of rebellion began to spread. Could humanity truly put aside centuries of division and hatred in a matter of days? Back in the war room, General Hayes faced mounting pressure from all sides. Political leaders were desperate for answers, but there were no guarantees. Humanity's best hope lay in something intangible, a unity of purpose, of spirit, that had never been seen before. The reality of the situation was sinking in. If Earth failed this test, there would be no second chance. Dr. Carter's voice broke through the tension. I've decoded part of the transmission. There's a pattern in the alien communication that suggests we need to do more than just fight. They're testing us for our potential to build a future. The challenge isn't just military. It's cultural, it's political, it's spiritual. We have to show them that we've outgrown our destructive past. The Galactic Council is watching how we handle this crisis. They'll know if we succeed or fail, not just by the actions we take, but by the way we come together as a global community. General Hayes stood tall, absorbing her words. We've got to show them that we've changed. The wars, the conflicts, they can't be our legacy. It's time to prove that humanity can overcome its past. As the hours ticked by, humanity was starting to come together. The protests, while still loud, grew smaller as more and more people began to recognize the magnitude of the situation. Governments began to issue statements that stressed the importance of unity. Earth's defenders were preparing for battle, but the true challenge still loomed ahead. The challenge of showing the Galactic Council that Earth was not just a planet filled with warring nations, but a species that had learned to unite for a common cause. By the time night fell, the world had begun to shift. Leaders from different countries met face to face in a way they never had before. Military forces, once divided, began training together as a unified front. It wasn't perfect. There were still obstacles, lingering doubts and fears. But it was a start. Humanity was learning to work together, and the realization began to dawn. This was more than a test of defense. This was a test of character. In the quiet moments between the chaos, General Hayes reflected on the message from the Galactic Council. They said we had one chance, he murmured to himself. One chance to show that we are worthy. He looked out at the horizon, where the alien ships still hovered. The future of Earth depended on this test, and humanity had to rise to the occasion. Dr. Carter joined him, her voice soft but filled with conviction. We can do this. We have to. The fate of Earth rested not just in their hands, but in the hands of every person on the planet. The Galactic Council was waiting, watching, and soon, humanity would have to prove that it had the strength, the unity, and the wisdom to survive. Hook. The world is beginning to unite, but it may be too little, too late. Can humanity prove to the Galactic Council that it has learned from its past mistakes and is worthy of a future among the stars? The clock is ticking, and the ultimate test is fast approaching. The days that followed felt like a blur, each one passing with an increasing sense of urgency. The world, once divided and fractured, was now forced to work together under the looming shadow of the Galactic Council. Nations that had been rivals for centuries were now forced to look past their historical differences, at least for the time being. Earth's very survival depended on it. Every nation, every leader, every individual had a role to play in this extraordinary, unprecedented challenge. And yet, despite the sudden unity, the fear and the uncertainty still gnawed at everyone. In the heart of the war room, General Hayes paced back and forth, his thoughts racing. The alien fleet continued to hover above, silent and ominous. Despite their apparent inaction, the pressure to act, to make a move, was immense. If Earth was to survive, it had to prove its worth to the Galactic Council. But how could humanity, torn by centuries of conflict, show that it had truly evolved? How could they demonstrate that they were capable of living up to the expectations of an advanced cosmic civilization? As the global leaders worked together to coordinate a unified front, Dr. Carter's work continued to uncover critical pieces of the alien puzzle. She had been tirelessly analyzing the transmissions, the alien technology, and even the strange symbols that appeared in the message. But progress was slow. While she had cracked some elements of the alien language and found patterns in their technology, the meaning behind the Galactic Council's test remained elusive. The real challenge, Dr. Carter realized, was not just understanding the alien message, it was translating it into something that humanity could act upon. The test was not merely about military might or technological power. It was about something far more fundamental. The Council wanted to know if humanity could rise above its violent past, if it could show the strength of character to unite for a common cause. General Hayes stood beside her, glancing at the flashing screens. Any breakthroughs yet? Dr. Carter shook her head, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. I think we're getting closer. There's a pattern in the alien communication that keeps repeating. It's almost like a set of instructions, though the exact meaning still eludes me. But I believe they're looking for something beyond our technology. They want to see how we handle ourselves, how we act when faced with adversity. Hayes nodded thoughtfully. If they want to see how we act, we need to show them that we can rise above our history. The wars, the conflicts, those can't be part of this equation. The challenge isn't just military, it's human. Outside the war room, the world was on edge. News outlets were flooded with reports, some hopeful, others filled with fear. Governments were scrambling to maintain order as protests and unrest flared in some regions, with people still unsure whether they could trust the newly forged alliances. Yet, in other parts of the world, a new spirit of cooperation was beginning to emerge. People were rallying behind the idea that this was a moment in history, a moment that could define the future of humanity. The greatest test, General Hayes knew, was how humanity would handle this crisis. The stakes were far higher than any battlefield strategy or military operation. The Galactic Council had made it clear that they were not interested in simply destroying Earth. They were interested in a deeper measure of the species. Could humanity set aside its past mistakes? Could it evolve, transform, and prove itself worthy of joining the stars? As the days passed, more and more nations began to organize themselves into collaborative teams. Joint military drills were held, where soldiers from opposing countries worked side by side, learning to trust one another in ways they never had before. Diplomats were dispatched to speak with leaders of neighboring countries, sharing resources and ideas in an effort to tackle the alien threat as a unified force. It was clear that the future of the planet was in the hands of this fragile coalition. Despite the progress, tension was still high. The world was on edge. While humanity had made great strides in cooperation, the wounds of past conflicts still ran deep. Skepticism and distrust remained in the air, and many wondered whether humanity could truly overcome its history of division. Could a species so used to fighting each other really change? The question was pressing. There were still many who questioned the very nature of the Galactic Council's intentions. Was this challenge a mere test, or was there something more sinister at play? Some of the world's leaders, particularly those who had experienced conflict firsthand, were uneasy. Could the Galactic Council be setting humanity up for failure, testing them in ways they didn't fully understand? After all, if Earth failed this test, what would happen? Would the Council simply destroy them, or would they face something even worse? Dr. Carter's findings gave some hope, but the uncertainty loomed large. The transmission patterns hinted at a greater test, something beyond just military or political unity. The challenge was personal. It was a test of humanity's ability to work together for a common cause, something humanity had never truly achieved on a global scale. On the eve of a global summit where Earth's leaders were to finalize their plans, General Hayes sat alone in the war room, reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. He had seen humanity at its worst, at its most fractured and divided. But now, for the first time, He was witnessing something different. People were coming together. The world was rising to the challenge. At that moment, he realized that the true test wouldn't be about who had the most advanced weaponry or the best defense plans. It was about trust. Could humanity trust each other, despite their differences? Could they put aside centuries of warfare, greed, and division, and show the Galactic Council that they had learned, evolved, and were ready to prove themselves? The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Carter walked in, her face filled with determination. "General, I've cracked it. I've cracked the code." Hayes stood up, his heart racing. "What does it mean?" Dr. Carter smiled, but there was a mix of excitement and concern in her eyes. "It means we have a chance, General. The Council is watching, and we have one opportunity to prove ourselves. But it's not just about the military or the politics. The test they're setting is about more than that. It's about humanity's ability to evolve, to rise above the conflicts of the past." General Hayes exhaled slowly, a weight lifting off his shoulders, but the realization of what still lay ahead sank in. "We have to be ready, and we have to be united." The world's leaders were ready. The military was prepared. The unity was fragile, but it was there. Now, humanity had to prove that it had evolved beyond its old ways, that it was ready for the challenge the Galactic Council had set before them. The time for division was over. Earth had to show its strength, its unity, and its potential. The fate of the planet rested on this one final act, the test of the species. Hook, Earth is united, but the final challenge is still ahead. With the Galactic Council watching, humanity must prove that it has evolved beyond its past mistakes. Will Earth pass the test and earn its place in the stars, or will it fall short? The ultimate challenge is about to begin. The day of the global summit arrived, and with it came a palpable tension that gripped every corner of Earth. The world's leaders, military commanders, and scientists had gathered in a secure location, their final strategy session critical to humanity's survival. For once, there were no individual nations, no single voices that mattered above all the others. It was a united Earth, with one singular purpose: to prove to the Galactic Council that humanity had the potential to evolve, to rise above its history of division, and to stand as one. General Hayes paced through the corridors of the summit facility, his mind racing. The stakes could not have been higher. All the preparation, all the years of conflict, all the political and military shifts that had occurred over the past days. It had all led to this moment. He had no idea what the test would be or what the consequences of failure would entail, but he knew that they could not afford to fail. There was no going back. This challenge was humanity's one shot at redemption. Outside the summit room, the world held its breath. People across every continent were glued to their screens, watching as their leaders gathered to face the unknown. It was a moment of unprecedented unity, and yet beneath the surface, fear and uncertainty simmered. Could they pull it off? Could humanity overcome its deeply ingrained divisions and prove that it had truly evolved? Inside the summit room, the leaders of the world sat around a massive round table. On the walls were the latest updates from military operations, diplomatic talks, and scientific breakthroughs. Yet despite the advanced technology on display, there was no real plan to follow. There were only questions. What exactly did the Galactic Council want from them? How could humanity possibly show that it was worthy? Dr. Carter, standing at the head of the room with the results of her latest research, spoke first. Her voice was steady, though her words carried the weight of the moment. The Council's message is clear. They want to see that humanity has evolved, not just in terms of technology or military might, but in terms of our ability to transcend our destructive past. The test, I believe, is not one we can prepare for in the traditional sense. It is a test of how we handle this moment, how we demonstrate our collective will. Her words hung in the air like a warning. The Council wasn't simply asking for a demonstration of military strength or unity in the traditional sense. They wanted to see how humanity responded to the challenge, how humanity would adapt in the face of crisis, how the species would learn to collaborate on a scale never before seen. President Adebayo of Nigeria was the first to speak, his voice filled with a sense of urgency. Dr. Carter is right. The Council didn't give us clear rules, but they are asking for something we've never done before. The key to passing this test lies in our ability to cooperate across all boundaries: social, political, cultural, military. If we fail to do that, if we remain divided, they will see that we are not ready. But if we unite as one species, if we show them we can transcend our past, we may have a chance. The President's words resonated with the room. For the first time, the leaders began to realize the magnitude of the task ahead. This was not just a matter of preparing for war. It was about setting aside all the differences and injustices that had once seemed so insurmountable. The challenge was a battle for humanity's soul. Would they be able to rise above their past mistakes? Would they be able to prove that they had learned from their history of conflict and division? General Hayes nodded, stepping forward to address the group. The truth is, we don't have all the answers, but we have something that can't be underestimated: our ability to adapt, to change. The world is watching us, not just as world leaders, but as representatives of all humanity. The Council will judge us based on how we respond, not only to their presence in our skies, but to the challenge they've set before us. The global leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Some of them had lived through wars and deep political divides. Could they really set all of that aside? Could they trust each other? The answer was crucial. There could be no more divisions, no more animosities or selfish ambitions. The Galactic Council was watching every move, observing not just their strength but their spirit. This would be a test of their will to unify, their ability to rise above their destructive tendencies, and to prove that humanity was more than just a species at war with itself. The summit continued for hours, the room buzzing with strategy discussions, military planning, and talks of diplomacy. Yet all of it seemed secondary to the fundamental truth that no one could deny: humanity was on trial. They were being judged not just for their capacity to defend their planet, but for their ability to evolve as a species. The Earth was united, more united than ever before. But could that unity be sustained? Could humanity prove it was ready for the stars? The tension across Earth reached its peak in the days following the historic broadcast. The words of President Adebayo echoed in every corner of the world. We will prove to you, and to ourselves, that humanity is capable of something greater. The Pledge of Unity had sparked something within the hearts of millions. People were coming together, united by a sense of purpose. Yet in the air, there was still a heavy uncertainty. Could this fragile unity hold? Could humanity really prove its worth to the Galactic Council? In the days that followed, Earth's leaders worked tirelessly to maintain the momentum. The summit had forged the initial bond between nations, but now it was time to act. Political leaders met daily to ensure that the unity forged at the summit didn't dissolve under pressure. Military forces, once divided by years of rivalry and distrust, were now training as a united front. Tactical operations were being coordinated with precision, blending the strengths of various nations' forces into a cohesive whole. But no matter how strong the unity seemed on the surface, deep down, a nagging fear lingered. General Hayes, whose experience in the military had made him a natural leader in this crisis, felt that fear more deeply than anyone. Standing in the command center late one night, watching the silent footage of the alien ships hovering above Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that humanity's actions so far might not be enough. The test was not over. It had only just begun. We've done everything we can, General Hayes said quietly to Dr. Carter, who stood beside him, eyes glued to the latest reports. But is it enough? Are we really ready for whatever comes next? Dr. Carter didn't immediately answer. Her gaze was fixed on the blinking data on the screen, but her thoughts were elsewhere. We've done something no one thought possible. We've united a divided world under one cause. The Council will have seen that. But this is just the first step. The real challenge is proving that we can hold on to this unity, not just in moments of peace, but when we're tested, when things get hard, when fear sets in. General Hayes nodded, his eyes never leaving the screen. The silence of the alien ships hanging above was almost mocking in its stillness. They had come to test humanity, but what if they were testing something deeper than military readiness or political unity? What if the real test was humanity's resilience, its ability to hold on to the spirit of cooperation under pressure? As if on cue, the message came in. It was encrypted, but Dr. Carter had seen enough of these transmissions to recognize the pattern. It was from the Galactic Council. "They're going to give us the next phase," Dr. Carter murmured under her breath as she worked quickly to decrypt the message. Hayes stood behind her, watching the screen with growing impatience. The message finally decoded, and Dr. Carter's eyes widened in disbelief. This is different. It's not just a test of defense anymore. It's about our commitment to each other. She turned to General Hayes, her face serious. This is their challenge. Humanity must prove its ability to sacrifice for the greater good. You are being asked to make a decision that will test your unity to its breaking point. Will you put the needs of your planet, your species, above your own personal interests and desires? The words sent a chill down Hayes' spine. The Galactic Council wasn't just testing humanity's ability to fight, it was testing their capacity for selflessness. In other words, Earth would have to make a choice, one that could either solidify their place in the stars or end their future entirely. "What do you mean by sacrifice?" Hayes asked, his voice edged with concern. "Are we supposed to lay down arms and surrender? What kind of decision are we talking about here?" Dr. Carter quickly scanned the rest of the message, but it was sparse, leaving much to interpretation. "It's not clear, but this is what they want us to do. Choose between the survival of your species or the lives of a select few individuals. If you make the wrong choice, if humanity proves to be too selfish to sacrifice for the greater good, there will be no second chance. The test will be over." Hayes couldn't believe what he was hearing. A decision like that would divide the entire world. Humanity's pride, their very sense of identity, was tied to their ability to preserve themselves at all costs. But now, they were being asked to consider whether survival itself was worth the price of sacrifice. Would humanity prove to the Galactic Council that it had learned from its history, that it could rise above its selfish nature? The message from the Galactic Council was a final ultimatum, and the clock was ticking. Earth had only 24 hours to decide, and the leaders had no answers, only more questions. It wasn't just about military strategy anymore. This was about humanity's collective soul. The next few hours were filled with intense debate. World leaders convened in emergency meetings, trying to figure out what, if anything, they could do to understand the true meaning behind the test. Could they agree on the terms? Could they decide on a path that wouldn't tear them apart? But even as they discussed, the implications of the Council's challenge weighed heavily on everyone. Would they choose the lives of a few to guarantee their survival? Or would they take the risk of holding out for a future that might never come? Throughout the night, messages poured in from all over the world. Questions, fears, pleas for answers. People were anxious. Many of them didn't understand the challenge. They were scared. What would this mean for their families, for their loved ones? General Hayes found himself back in the war room, alone with his thoughts. He stared at the footage of the alien ships hovering in the sky. For the first time, he didn't feel the comfort of knowing the enemy's next move. No amount of military power, no strategic advantage could help them now. They were being asked to look deep within themselves, to prove that humanity had the capacity for something higher than survival instinct, something that transcended personal ambition, that proved they could live for each other. Dr. Carter joined him, her eyes filled with understanding. The decision is ours to make now. The future of Earth isn't just in our hands anymore, Hayes. It's in every hand on this planet. Every human must decide if they are willing to sacrifice for the good of all. A grim silence settled between them. The test was not over. It had only just begun. And as the clock continued to tick down, the question remained, would humanity rise to the challenge, or would they fall into the same patterns that had defined their violent history? Hook. The test has escalated. The Galactic Council demands a sacrifice, one that could fracture the fragile unity humanity has fought to build. The clock is ticking. Earth must choose. Will humanity rise to prove its worth, or will fear and selfishness tear them apart? The final hours before the Galactic Council's deadline felt like an eternity. Earth's leaders were exhausted, their minds racked with tension as they tried to come to terms with the impossible decision that lay before them. Every possible outcome felt like it could lead to catastrophe, yet there was no time left to second-guess. The message from the Galactic Council was clear. Humanity must choose between self-preservation and sacrifice for the greater good. Choose wrong, and the test will be over. General Hayes sat at the command center, staring at the digital clock that was ticking down the minutes. His thoughts were heavy with the gravity of the decision ahead. Would the world choose survival at any cost, or would they put aside their own desires for the sake of a future greater than themselves? What was the right answer? Was humanity truly ready to embrace selflessness, or would fear and selfishness rule the day? In the war room, the world's leaders had gathered once more. This was not a time for politics or diplomacy. The challenge had become something much more profound, something that reached to the very core of what it meant to be human. Every leader, every general, every diplomat understood the stakes, but none of them knew how to lead their people through such a decision. President Adebayo stood up, his face grim but determined. "We've come too far to falter now," he said, his voice carrying a sense of resolve. "The Council has made it clear that we must make a choice. The fate of humanity, it is in our hands. But this is no longer about us as leaders or as nations. This is about every single person on this planet. We must prove that we are capable of more than just survival. We must prove that we can rise above the fear that has held us back for so long." His words hung heavily in the room, but there was an undeniable energy in his speech. A sense of unity began to slowly settle over the group. Despite the overwhelming burden of the decision, there was a recognition that this was the moment that could define the future of their species. General Hayes stood beside the president, his posture rigid, his mind racing with the weight of responsibility. "We know what's at stake," he said, his voice low but steady. "This isn't just about our species surviving. The Council wants to see if we are capable of more than self-interest. We've been divided for so long that it seems impossible to put the needs of the whole above our own. But this is our chance to prove that we can rise to the occasion." There was a pause, and then Dr. Carter, who had been silent for most of the meeting, stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her resolve was unwavering. "I've been looking at the data again. The Council's test is not about one decision. It's about humanity's ability to continue making decisions for the greater good, even after this challenge. If we show them we can make the hard choice now, we'll prove we are worthy of their trust. But it's not going to be easy." Her words were like a call to action. The room fell into a tense silence as every leader and military commander absorbed the weight of her message. Earth was not being asked to make a choice for their survival alone. They were being asked to make a statement that would echo across the galaxy. Could they be trusted? Could they sacrifice their own desires for a better future? President Adebayo nodded solemnly. "Then we have to decide, and we have to decide quickly." The discussions in the room became heated as leaders from all corners of the globe debated what the right course of action should be. Some were in favor of offering up resources. Others argued that humanity's most valuable asset was its ability to create and innovate, something that the Galactic Council would value. But the overarching question remained: should they choose survival at the cost of others, or should they take a risk and sacrifice a few to prove their greater worth? Time seemed to move slower as the debate raged on. Hours turned into minutes. Then the decision was made. The leaders of the world, despite their differences, would make a sacrifice to demonstrate humanity's commitment to a future greater than their own. They had agreed to offer up a portion of the planet's most valuable resources, the very things that would sustain Earth's future, for the sake of this challenge. In essence, they would be giving up something they needed to prove their willingness to sacrifice for a cause greater than themselves. As the final decision was sent out to the Galactic Council, the leaders gathered in a virtual assembly, facing the world's eyes. President Adebayo's words echoed once more. "We've chosen to make the sacrifice, not because we are weak, but because we believe that the future of humanity is worth it. We will not let fear decide our fate. We will take this step together, and we will prove to the Galactic Council that we are more than just survivors. We are ready to join the greater community of the stars." And then, the world waited. Hours passed with no response from the Council. The minutes dragged on like days, as anxiety and anticipation gripped every corner of Earth. Would they accept the sacrifice? Would this decision be enough to prove that humanity had evolved beyond its violent past? Would the Council believe that Earth had truly learned how to live for something greater than itself? At last, as the world held its breath, a new message arrived from the Galactic Council. The screen flickered to life, and Dr. Carter immediately began to decrypt it. Her hands trembled as the words came into focus. "Humanity has passed the test." The room erupted in disbelief and joy. The sacrifice had been enough. The Galactic Council had seen the selflessness in humanity's decision. Earth had proven that it was capable of putting the greater good ahead of individual desires. Humanity had shown that it could rise above its history of war, division, and greed. General Hayes stood still, a sense of profound relief washing over him. The test was over, but Earth's journey had only just begun. The Galactic Council's message continued. "You have demonstrated the courage and unity required to join the greater galactic community. Earth will be welcomed into the stars, not as a species clinging to survival, but as a species that has learned the true meaning of cooperation, sacrifice, and trust." Humanity had passed the ultimate test, but more than that, it had earned a place in the cosmos, a place among the stars. The future was bright, not just because of technological advancement or military strength, but because of the spirit of unity and sacrifice that now defined Earth. As President Adebayo addressed the world once more, his voice was filled with a sense of triumph. "Today, we are no longer just Earth's nations. Today, we are one united species, ready to take our place among the stars. We have proven that humanity is capable of greatness. And together, we will shape the future, not just for ourselves, but for all of us." The world had passed the test, and now the stars awaited. Hook. Earth has proven its worth to the Galactic Council. Humanity's sacrifice has earned them a place among the stars, but what lies ahead for a species that has only just begun to unlock its potential? The journey into the unknown has only just begun.